funding portion of our jail with a jail millage is because 25 years ago they decided that they were going to build a new jail and fund it with that jail millage.
And also put in operations.
That's correct. Fund the construction and the operations with that. Well, that was a 20-year debt service. It expired. We paid off the debt, and so went the millage. Well, now we don't have that operating millage. If you look at that board, and
I've seen that one.
Yeah, well, you can see where while $1.5 million would come from the jail millage, you can see the actual cost of the sheriff's department and jail is more like $12 million. So in essence, the general operating millage is paying for the jail, the vast majority of it. We're just short because of that construction bond that they did 25 years ago.
That you've been relying on
Correct.
To operate the jail.
We've been relying on.
And so now that we're in this pickle, you seem to see no other way to squeeze another $1 million out of what you've got there.
Well, if you look at this chart, the red ones we can't change.
Oh, the reds are the set ones. Okay.
The prosecutor. You look at some of these public defender. I mean, that is required. Public defender costs a lot more than $500,000.
Sure.
But that is our contribution as determined by the state. I can't reduce it. And it's the same thing if you look at like public health or the health department. $219,000 is our minimum contribution. That pulls in millions of dollars in grant monies. So I can't very well cut that. So that's why I put that in red. And when you look at these other things here that we can cut, you can see we don't have a lot of control over a lot of these. And frankly, they're so small. A lot of these are 1, 2, 3 people in a department. You cut a person out of that department, you've pretty much gutted it. There's only one person left to do the work. So it is very difficult to do. It's hard to cut $1.5 million. And frankly, we're looking at a plan. We're ever hopeful that I don't have to, but if we do have to, we will balance our budget. We have no choice. It's the law.
But do you think you will spread it out, or will you, as the sheriff is saying, make him cut the $1 million? Well, I guess he's talking about more than $1 million, but
we're talking about $1.5 million. The sheriff's only $1 million of that.
Yeah, he said you told him he has to cut $1 million if this doesn't pass.
I did tell him that, to be frank. Look at the numbers. His budget.
But will you really do it?
That's up to the county commissioners, frankly. Nobody wants to cut law enforcement, for goodness sakes. No, nobody wants to do that. But at the same time, so we have to pay our bills. Nobody wants to have ramen night at home either. But sometimes you do what you got to do to pay your bills.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe the reserve could be reduced a little bit.
You could, but at the same time, our reserve. Why do we have a reserve? We have a reserve because we get paid more or less one time a year. If you think of your own home situation, if you got a check once a year and you had to live on it, you better have a little something in savings because bad things happen sometimes. We have not often had to use tax anticipation notes, but sometimes that's necessary because our cash flow is such that we don't have the extra millions to pay all the townships and villages and city. With our reserve, we do. And that saves us money by not having to go borrow money to pay them and wait for the taxes to come in. It's a very difficult situation. What people don't realize, I believe, is, and I hate to say it this way, but we have all these various pots of money, these different pots of money that the law says I can only use that pot of money for this particular activity and I can't just dip into it. It's not like your checkbook at home. This week I got to fix my car. You write a check and something else suffers. It doesn't work that way. The law is very clear on our money, on how we spend it. We get grants. In fact, I know the courthouse they just received notice that they're going to be awarded $1 million grant to do security updates around the courthouse. That's $1 million. I don't have if I take that money, I can only spend it on the courthouse for security updates. I can't say, well, I really need pothole fixes. I can't move it to that. We send a whole lot of money to Washington, to Lansing, and then they send part of it back to us in grants. Why do they do that? Why do they do it that way? because they get to decide what is important.
It's control.
It's not the local folks who get to decide what the priority is. I think our local priorities would be much different than some of the federal and state priorities.
So any thoughts about, I don't know, ditching the millage system and just increasing the overall general fund millage? Or are we going to keep rolling this way, you think?
You mean with the
Well, like increase the general fund and
The sheriff's
yeah, and
millage.
have the commissioners decide, bigger pot, but a balanced decision making,
Well,
about where money goes to the extent that you're not bound by grants.
At this point here, that's a difficult situation. Frankly, and you might have heard me say it before, the way we fund local government in Michigan is broken. I still stand by that. In fact, I could show you the numbers that every year, maybe not every year, but almost every year, my revenues do not keep up with my inflationary costs. Healthcare and all those kind of things, employee pay raises, when you add that all up, I'm spending more than I take in additional dollars, the new increase. How do you do that? Well, you've got to either raise taxes or cut costs. So now there is no real room for raising taxes. People don't want to pay more taxes. I don't want to pay more taxes. I'm no different than anybody else. But at the same time, I do want law enforcement. I want my services that we provide. And they're necessary. A lot of people, we feed 1,500 people a day on Meals on Wheels. And we take care of people with mental health issues and things like that. Things that if we do not take care of, bad things happen. And it's frankly cheaper to work with people and pay that extra money now than to not work with people, and then real bad things happen, and there's victims, and there's incarceration, and there's all kinds of additional problems and costs associated with with not doing it. That's simple. It's a hard situation. It really is. I would love to be able to go for a full general millage, but given the climate, I suspect it's very difficult to get that
To
approved.
keep up. So are we sunk? What's the solution here, long term?
Frankly, the state's going to have to do something different. We cannot. It's no different than our road funding model. We rely on a gas tax. Well, if there's going to be a whole lot less people driving cars, how are we going to pay for roads? They need to change that. Well, we've got to do something with how we fund local government too.